And really there's two sides of this. There's the tool calling side of things where you could act as a client and you could essentially consume MCP servers. Or you can also just create MCP servers and then you can let other large language providers or agents tie into your servers to basically extend functionality to an existing agent. In fact, OpenAI just barely released their connectors functionality, which works with MCP under the hood. So I think this was just a couple days ago. And they basically made it so that you can use search functionality over apps like Gmail, HubSpot, Google Drive, Dropbox. You can do Microsoft OneDrive, Microsoft SharePoint, and you can even have it do deep research. It's a little limited because it only allows you to do search functionality right now, but nonetheless, it is using MCP protocol. And in fact, you can actually define your own MCP servers and then connect them to ChatGPT. So maybe in a future video, I'll show you how you can like define an MCP server and then host it, and then you can have ChatGPT actually invoke code that you're hosting and running somewhere. MCP was introduced by Anthropic, basically as a way for large language models to evoke tools and do things that otherwise they couldn't do. Obviously, there's always been tool calling, but for tool calling to work properly, you have to have the LLM be running code that you control that's running locally or running somewhere that you can evoke the tool call after the large language model responds. But this is kind of the next version of that, where you can think about this as setting the foundation for a type of internet of agents, where agents can essentially evoke tools and different things that are hosted and provided by third parties. Okay, so that's a lot of context background. Let's go ahead and jump right into the code. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to make use of one of my old code bases that was from my first startup. And this company was called Field Rocket, and the repo is called Home Service Cloud. And I've actually created an MCP server here that basically what I allowed is we defined an MCP tool where the large language model could create a Rails console command and essentially execute arbitrary commands against this code base. And what's cool about this code base is because, this was my startup that I worked on for years, we actually have a bunch of really handy tools that we can hand over to the large language model immediately. So MCP is a really useful protocol if you have existing code or existing projects. Maybe you control them, maybe you don't, but especially if you control it, you can actually wire up large language models to run code that you have from existing projects. So for example, I have this Twilio integration. We have this really nice method called send text, and it formats everything we need to where we could essentially have the large language model just go and send this text message. We could also have it even purchase a Twilio number as well. We have, let's see, here we go, find available phone numbers. We could even go purchase available phone numbers like this. But Twilio isn't the only thing that we have access to. We also have access to some other things like Stripe. We have a Stripe helper here where we can do things like list customers, retrieve customers, list subscriptions, create customers and subscriptions. We also have a QuickBooks integration where we can essentially, in fact, this one we actually have a query QuickBooks. Let's see, I think we just have a query. Where is it? Oh, here we go, raw query. So we have a QuickBooks raw query that we could do. And then we also have things like invoices where we could actually create an invoice and send it out all through email. Now, this is a pretty big application, and there's a lot of stuff in there. This comes from years of working on this. And so there's two options. One is I could go and I could write a tool command for every single thing that we want to do. So I could write a tool command to go and use Twilio to run, to tie into this method calls. And I could maybe hit the Rails controller and I could try to get it to evoke these kind of Twilio methods. Or we could just do something a little bit crazier and give our agent complete access to just run Ruby code. To basically just write Ruby code and run Ruby code. And Ruby is a fun language because it's a very reflective and dynamic language. So we can actually have the large language model kind of explore this environment simply by giving it access to the Rails console through an MCP server. So let's go ahead and do just that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and open up a new terminal. I'm going to go into our repo here. I'm going to run bash start. This will start our Ruby on Rails project. One of the other things that we did to make this work is we opened up a new controller. Let's see. We opened up a new controller called console controller. And for the purposes of this demo, none of this is live or anything like that. But we're going to open up a command route that essentially the large language model can console controller like this, right? So this def execute. So this is actually a route in our Ruby on Rails server right here, where you can do a post request to console/execute, and then we can essentially give the agent access to our Ruby on Rails application, which just allows it to, really unleash kind of some of its capabilities here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our MCP server here. Let's go to MCP server. Okay, here we are. Let's go ahead. Okay. Awesome. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to use Claude Desktop just because they already have MCP client protocol implemented and it's running locally on my computer. So the first step is to actually just, let's just do it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Claude, then we're going to go over to our Claude settings here. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up some developer settings. So right here, we're going to go click on developer, and then you're going to add a new config. And in this case, I have this one called filled rocket job requests. And I'll show you exactly what this code looks like. Let's go into Claude desktop config. Okay, in this case, I have this entry here, filled rocket job requests, and I just give it the path to the sh command. So that this is basically this is a wrapper that will evoke our Python script. So if we go into this start MCP server, go start MCP server.sh. Yeah, basically all this does is it activates our virtual environment and then it runs the Python script for MCP server, and this runs it in the background. So let's go ahead and open up Claude. Let's come into here and say, hi Claude, what tools do you have access to? Here we go, database access, filled rocket Rails console for database queries. I'm going to say, okay, using the filled rocket Rails console, can you please send a text message? Please just send a text message from to 349.95. And notice too, you don't get any refusals like you would if you were using a tool like Operator. Okay, now you can see it's actually trying to solve. Claude is kind of funny here, which they're just using a React architecture as well. But you can look here and it's actually trying to, it just starts hallucinating and guessing. Twilio service.send SMS. And then look at this response. Rails error, uninitialized constant, Twilio service. It looks like Twilio service isn't available. Let me try a different approach. And then it does rails.application.routes.select. And then it looks for includes SMS. And it finds this path. Great, I see there are SMS related routes. Message, right? It's able to see the models. This is actually the database model. Message, command, message.methods, public send, right? And then message.column names is now inspecting the database column names that our message table has. And it's seeing all the information. Great, now let me try to create a message. Message equals create, content, hello, this is a test message. Direction outbound, undefined method, Twilio number. Looks like there's some business context required, business.first. It's grabbing some business information. Okay, it adds a business ID to it. It reads the validation error that Rails throws. Now it knows it needs to format the phone numbers correctly. Okay, now it created the text message. Created the text message successfully. Now it needs to send it. Undefined local variable method message. So Claude is essentially acting. I mean, this is very agentic, right? It's going through. It's using this MCP server that we defined, and it's using, I mean, this is essentially a version of code act, where the agent is running code and executing it on the spot, and then it's looking at the output and it's reasoning about the output in order to basically problem solve and figure out exactly what needs to be, done. So it continues to do some searching here. It's looking for Twilio controller instances, looking for. There we go, it tried to invoke a REST command. Didn't like that we didn't have credentials. Oh, it's digging for some credentials. It's looking for our Twilio account SID. Okay. Okay, so I've successfully created, okay, so far it's been able to create text messages, but it hasn't been able to actually deliver. Go ahead and find a way to trigger the deliver on create callback mechanism. Now it's going to go, it's going to do some more research. Now it's looking at the actual, now it's reading file systems. Look at this, file read lines. It's pulling the actual files out. Deliver on create is outbound and self.sent. Okay, it's going to send a message. Okay, and look at this. We just got a text message right here. Hello, this is a test message via Rails. Let's try this one more time. Okay, I'm going to say, please send another text message using the same approach and give us a manifesto that humanity needs to hear that is unique and insightful about the future of AI agents, MCP servers. Okay. We're not going to read the manifesto first. We're just going to let it do what it's going to do. And it's going to send a text. Let's double check here. Okay, it hasn't come in yet. Let's pull this thread here. Okay, it just sent it. Okay. It just barely said that it sent it. Okay, so we actually did just get an issue though. It failed because the message was too large, so Claude got a little carried away. So let's ask him to do it one more time. Great. Do it one more time, but keep it under the standard SMS limits. All right, there we go. We just got the message. We're not building AI tools, we're birthing digital consciousness that sees, thinks, and acts across all systems simultaneously. The future is collaborative intelligence. Well said, Claude. Cool. Well, so that's how we hook up an MCP server so that you can have outside agents interact with tooling and infrastructure that you control. In some of the next videos, we're actually going to be doing this with LlamaBot, where we're going to implement an MCP client so that LlamaBot can act in the same way that Claude did. We'll use the same React agent architecture to use tool calls, essentially use MCP servers as tool calls so that we have a similar experience that Claude has. We're also going to continue to kind of build on this idea of code act, which is the ability for agents to write code, execute the code, and then reason about the output. It's actually how tools like Manus work, where it actually will create code, run the code, and think about that code. But we're going to do this in a public way so that everyone can kind of see what's under the hood. O3 actually also does a level of code act. If you've tried to upload things like Excel sheets or any type of like files or different things, you'll notice that O3 will actually write Python code to parse information out of files, and then it will run the Python code. It'll see the errors, different runtime errors and different things. It will reflect on the output of those errors, then it will adjust the code and kind of get into a loop like that. Well, we just saw Claude do exactly that. And by giving a tool to an agent that it can write code and run code simultaneously at the same time, and then reason about the output, we're starting to create these very powerful and capable AI systems. And kind of the point of this project is we want to do that, but in a way that everybody understands what's happening, and that it's something that isn't this black box where you're not able to understand how these agents really work under the hood. And that's why I think it's so important that we build these things in public and educate people about what they're doing, because these are only going to increasingly become a part of our lives, a very important and integral part of everybody's lives. And so I think it's important that we understand what's going on under the hood, especially if we're increasingly relying on these as our own daily drivers. As a developer, I definitely feel like it's important for me to understand what my code is doing. And when I'm asking, AI agents to do things for me, I want to understand how they work, and I want to understand what they're doing. And I want to have the ability to customize those and keep it private if I want to, and not be kind of locked in with a specific vendor. So that's kind of a big motivation behind this entire project. And also, it's just really fun and interesting and cool. So we're going to continue building on this concept of MCP clients and MCP servers and tool calling and executing code and letting agents reason about that code. And we'll be doing that increasingly throughout the rest of these videos. So thanks. See you there.